We are here for an amazing session called Powerful Habits of Successful People. And we're really going to give you that information, giving you information from renowned leaders in the mortgage industry, as well as business leaders like Stedman Graham, giving you a wealth of information today about how to do what the topic suggests, how to be more powerful, how to be more successful, and how to learn many of the proven habits that our featured speakers will share today. My name is Marcia Griffin. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Outreach with HomeFree-USA, and I'm so excited to have you all. We are a nonprofit organization, really devoted, and we exist to move families up the financial ladder through sustainable home ownership. And not just through home ownership, through also getting all the tools and the keys that they need to really build a wealthier and happier and more successful life. We also have a program called the Center for Financial Advancement, and this is a powerhouse program where we reach our historically Black colleges and universities, and we teach and develop young people for leadership in the mortgage and finance industry while giving them financial awareness and skills and really teaching them what they need to know to get ahead. So thank you to our HomeFree-USA family who joined us. Thank you to our Center for Financial Advancement family who have joined us. Thank you to everyone on the line. We are here for a wonderful session today, and without further ado, I want to bring on a lady who is a powerhouse in her own right, is a powerful person in her own right, and is a person that is that has made all of this happen, that has made our work at HomeFree-USA so important to each and every one of those we serve. So without further ado, I want to welcome Marcia Griffin, our president, founder, and CEO of HomeFree-USA. Go ahead, Marcia. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm on or not. Great, thank you. And welcome to all of you. We so appreciate everyone who is a part of our masterclass today. It is important for us to sort of connect and introduce you to people who we just think the world of. These are people who are doing great things in communities across the country. These are people who are doing great things in corporate America, like with Jackie Welch at Freddie Mac. On an entrepreneurial side, like Stedman Graham. Certainly our job is to bring folks together. None of us can do it by ourselves, and we are so appreciative of not only the smarts, but the inspiration that our friends and our leaders bring to the table, to all of us who are here. In order to grow, we've got to learn, we've got to be about business, and we've got to be about partnerships. So I want to introduce you to two people who I think the world of today, folks who have been a part of HomeFree-USA and our Center for Financial Advancement, and so much in the nonprofit communities across the country. These are people who you need to know. These are people who you're going to love as much as I do, certainly after meeting them today, and we appreciate having you with us. So this is going to be quite informal. You can ask questions at the end and channel your questions into the chat box, and Milan will ask our panelists your questions at the end, and we are ready to go. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce you a real heavy hitter here, Miss Jacqueline Welch of Freddie Mac. Jackie, we want to see your face here, and let's just make sure that okay. You know, I'm trying to, okay. There's Jackie. Jackie, thank you so much for being with us and for certainly gracing us with your presence and your work. Talk to us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your story. How did you get to where you started from to where you are in Freddie Mac?
Well, first of all, thank you, Marcia, for the invitation to participate today. and for all the great work that HomeFree does. It's a privilege. On behalf of Freddie Mac, I can say this, it's a privilege for us to be in partnership with you, as you say, working particularly with our young people coming through the HBCU system. There's so much work and focus these days, particularly on building Black wealth and educating Black youth on building wealth and sustaining wealth. And so the work that you do is critical when you think about the fact that for most, quote, wealthy American families, at the center of their wealth is home ownership. And so the work that you do speaks not only to today, but has reverberations into the future. There are things that you are doing now that neither of us will live to see produce fruit in the future. So thank you for your vision and the opportunity to partner with you in a very meaningful way. It's very difficult. It's not like you didn't tell me you were going to ask me that question. It's hard to know where to start. And so I'm just going to arbitrarily start with, this might mean something to the young people on the line. I started college as a pre-med major, in fact, which now as a 50-year-old woman is comical to me because there were no physicians in my family and there was no Dr. Quinn medicine woman on TV. So I'm not quite sure where that vision of myself as a physician manifested or how it came to be, but it was very clear. I thought I was going to live in a small town and carry a black bag and make people well. And through a bunch of different things, ultimately ended up in what is now human resources, but when I started was called personnel. And the very quick story to that is I'm from a working class family, worked my way through college, did a co-op with the local urban league. I went to Syracuse University, so shout out to all my orange folks. Worked my way through school, spent one semester working for the local urban league, worked in their department of employment, which essentially trained local residents for opportunities with local corporations. And in that work, I will never forget, for as long as I live, the first person who I personally went through the process with and ultimately helped secure a job. And he was this tall, very masculine Black man. And he had completed his 60-day probation period with Yellow Freight Trucking Company. And he came to the Urban League office to see me, and he was open-faced crying. And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, and I still get a lump in my throat when I talk about it. He said to me, "Thank you for giving me a way to provide for my family." And I've never forgotten it, just in terms of the dignity that people extract from work, and that the vast majority of folks want to be able to provide for themselves and for their families. And so that's how I became involved with personnel, and over the years, worked in a variety of different capacities that ultimately result in me now leading human resources for Freddie Mac.
Well, that's a great story. And you continue to make people well. Jackie, in the work that you're doing now, and certainly through your career, talk to us, if you would, about the critical elements or the critical skills or characteristics that you have found and that you have used yourself or that you have found needed in your work, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcia, and I've given it a lot of thought since we started talking about having this moment together. The first thing I would say, particularly to the younger people on the phone, those of you who are still matriculated in your undergraduate studies, and even those of you who are in your graduate programs, it is important, in my view, to take the opportunity to learn your craft, hone your skill. If there's something that you know now that you are particularly gifted at and or have a deep interest in, dedicate yourself to that. If it's that you are good at legal interpretation, look for opportunities to be the person that people go to interpret legal language. If you are a sales-oriented person, maybe you're too early in your career to own an account, but you can find a way to perhaps own a product inside of an account. If you are a project manager, hone that skill so when people think we need a project manager, they think of you. These early years are foundational. And so to the extent that you know what you want to do, look for every opportunity to do those things and hone that craft so that you become the go-to person. As you advance in your career, the higher you go, the higher expectation is that you will be an expert in something. And we don't wake up experts, we build ourselves to expertise. So start now thinking about what are those things that I see myself doing as my life's work, and seek out every single opportunity to do those things so that you hone your skill and hone your skill set. The second thing I would say is invest in relationships. I know when I was coming up, in every environment I've ever worked in, someone or someone's would say, this is a relationship-oriented company, or this is a relationship-oriented business. And, you know, over time, I've seen that to be true. There are 3 relationships I would call out as being particularly important. They are often, in my view, used interchangeably, but they are actually 3 very distinct relationships. The first relationship would be that of a coach. And I'll use a sports analogy here. If you are a golfer or a tennis player and you want to improve your swing, you would hire a coach. I would say to you, Marcia, your backhand is superb. I'd like you to coach me. How many sessions do you think I need in order to improve my backhand? You and I would agree on what's 10 sessions at this rate. At the end of 10 sessions, we check to see, am I satisfied with my improvement? And that's it. It was a transaction that was agreed to. I now have that skill set. That's a coach. How it shows up in work, for as an example, and I'm using myself as an example, not because it's perfect, but because I know the intimate details, right? So when I start a new job, the first thing I do is look for someone in the finance department that can walk me through the balance sheet. I have no desire to be a finance expert, but I do need to understand the economic model of how the organization makes money. And one of the ways to do that is through the balance sheet. So I find someone in finance, I say, hey, help me understand how we make money. We meet however many times that is required for me to build that level of expertise. Maybe we'll end up friendly, maybe we won't. But the point is, that person coached me. I was transparent about my need. I went to an expert and I said, I need your expertise. And we agreed to the terms of that relationship. So that's a coach. A mentor comes from the Greek mythology, and the idea of mentorship is this is someone who knows your full body of work. They know all about you. They know your professional life, they know your personal life, they know your ambitions, they know your value set. This is someone that knows a lot about you, the full person. How a mentor shows up, as an example, I moved here to Northern Virginia to work for Freddie Mac. Moved here from Atlanta, so it required me uprooting my family. And a very good mentor of mine, I went to him immediately for some advice. You know, what do you think about this? Here's the offer. And this mentor, you know, said to me, well, have you considered what the move would be like for your husband and his business? What will the impact of the move be on your children? I've read about the company. I've heard things about your boss. Here's what I know. Do you think you can work for this individual? And how do you feel about living in Northern Virginia? Is it diverse enough for you? So this person knew enough about me, both personally and professionally, not to tell me what to do, but to ask the questions to help me ultimately arrive at a decision that was good for me and by extension for my family. So whereas a coach talks at you and very much tells you what to do, turn this way, bend this way, make the swing at this rate of speed, that person's talking at you. A mentor talks with you, asking those important questions, helping you to focus, helping you to make your own decision, but with as much information as is possible because they know enough about you to do so. So you've got coach, you've got mentor. The third relationship is a sponsor. And this typically is inside of an organization. So whereas the coach talks to you and the mentor talks with you and asks good questions, the sponsor is the person that can talk about you when you're not in a room and talk about yourself. The sponsor is the person that says, Marcia is completely the next person for this job. Marcia is completely the next person in line for a raise. And these are all the reasons. I know about her body of work. I know how she's contributing to the organization. So where your coach is talking to you, your mentor is talking with you, the sponsor talks about you when you're not in a room to talk about yourself. And this person is organizationally at a place where what he or she says carries weight and adds velocity to your career. So this is typically someone who is senior to you and has the political capital to support your career velocity. So the second thing I would offer up for those of you on the webinar, the live stream, is to build relationships. Always be thinking about investing in relationships. And it's not one way. Think about ways that you can invest in those relationships, even as a junior person. How can you add velocity to other people's careers? And always be looking behind you for who you can mentor, who can you coach, who can you sponsor. So those are the two things I would offer up in terms of items that have helped me in my career thus far.
Jackie, in terms of developing relationships, a lot of people are, not so comfortable with reaching out to others? Is there an easier way to build relationships with people who are in corporate America, who you want to either get as a coach or mentor? What do you suggest if there is one or two things?
That's a great question too. So I lack empathy on this one because I go, everybody gets out of bed and puts their pants legs on one at a time. So I don't have that intimidation, and I know what my motives are. We're pure. I mean, I think partly, and I guess what I would say is have a pure intention. If your intention is just to be seen or known, then you are going to feel nervous and not as confident in your approach. But genuinely, if I know Marcia is the expert in what it means to establish a good credit at the front end so that later on I can leverage that good credit for the purchase of my first home, that's a pure intention. And if I wanted that expertise from you, I would come to you and say, Marcia, I respect your expertise. This is my situation. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about how I get myself credit worthy for my ultimate goal of a home purchase? I think what inhibits most people from being that transparent is the concern around the no. What will invariably happen as a result of this live stream is I will get, 9,000 or however many LinkedIn requests of people saying, will you mentor me? And I clearly can't mentor everyone. It's not because my heart's not in it. It's just, I don't have the bandwidth. What I will say to people is I can't be a mentor, but I'm happy to go on the phone with you for 15 minutes if there's something specific you need from me. And in that conversation, if there is someone that's better suited for that person's question, or for whom I think, oh, this person, I know someone does have bandwidth, but this person would be a good match to, I'm happy to make that referral. So partly it's don't be intimidated that you might not get the answer you want. And if you approach me and I go, I can't mentor you, it's important for you to say, well, are you willing to spend 15 minutes with me on this one question? What's your plan B if you don't get the ultimate thing that you want? But this whole idea that just because you ask, you're gonna get, is unfair to the person, number one, and it's not realistic. And if that's what's holding you back, then you just got to fight through that and kind of go, okay, if I don't get my optimal answer, then I have a plan B. So if Marcia says to me, no, I don't have time for coffee, I don't have an hour, I'll go, do you have 15 minutes? And is there someone who clearly isn't going to be as great as you are, but can give me some insight on this process? Is there someone else you'd recommend that I can speak with because I have this very specific need?
Well, look, you better watch out. Offering and talking about being a mentor, my God, you may be overwhelmed after this call. But Jackie, in all honesty, I've got a couple more questions here. As a Black woman in a large corporate entity like Freddie Mac, what are the greatest challenges that you have, if you could let us know?
I get this question a lot, and over time, my answer to it has evolved. I mean, partly, I've only ever been a Black woman. And so to have an answer to that question presupposes that I have some other experience that I can compare it to say, well, when I'm this, it's this, and then when I'm a Black woman, it's this. So I don't know anything else but the position I've always occupied. So that's sort of my disclaimer, my opening comment. I can tell you, I've been working since 1991. I graduated undergrad 1991, put myself through graduate school part-time at night, but worked full-time that whole time. So it's inconceivable to me, but I've been working for 29 years, right? This has happened. And I consider myself fortunate in that I don't have any stories of any outright discrimination. I don't have any experience that are firsthand where I go, clearly I was being held back because of race and or gender. And some of that I think is because early on, I remember being a buyer at Lord & Taylor, which at the time was a division of the May department stores company. And back then, retail, at least on the merchant side, was far more male and white than you would have thunk. Right. And I remember going to one of my very first divisional meetings and walking in, and I was one of two Black people. We were two Black women, so no Black men. I was fresh out of college, so I was fairly young. And at the time, I wore my hair in a fade. It was sort of, Michael Jordan fade. And I remember when I cut all my hair off too, this woman I hardly knew ran up to me and she said, "I'm so sorry." And I'm sorry about what? "I didn't know you had cancer." I mean, it was just an anomaly back then. And I was like, "I didn't know I had cancer either. This is news to me." But I remember going into that room and I remember it like it's 5 minutes ago. And I just remember thinking, I am never really going to know what's in anybody's mind as they process me. Is it that I'm young? Is it that I'm Black? Is it that I'm female? Is it my hair? Like, what is it? I'll never know. And I just made this conscious decision to just never worry about that. Like, never entertain it, never even filter my experiences through what I think might be going on. Because in my view, that's an exercise in futility. Now, having said that, I have been in situations where I've felt I've had to advocate for myself in ways that maybe I didn't see my peers having to advocate. That maybe I had to raise my hand longer. And in addition to raising my hand, say, "I have a question." Or maybe it's that I had to ask for help 1 time more than maybe someone else did. And I've certainly been in these situations as it relates to pay, where I go, "What's the range of pay for this job? And what do you need to see for me to be on the top end of the range?" Or, "I've just completed this big project that we talked about 3 months ago being part of my objectives. So I just want to make sure that you and I agree that it was a smashing success. I think it is. So at the end of the year, neither of us are going, 'Wait, what are you talking about?'" So there is a level of self-advocacy I see myself doing in quantities that maybe I don't see in other people who were similarly situated. But again, I don't know what to attribute that to. And so I don't waste time on that side of the equation. I just think about, okay, this is my objective. This is my plan to get there. And this is how I'm going to engage and show up to get what it is I say is my objective.
Absolutely.
It's exhausting. If you spend too much time thinking about what you think it is, that's exhausting and ultimately will, I think, hamper your performance.
Well, look, we're proud of you and certainly love Freddie Mac. Another question. As an employer and a major employer there with Freddie Mac, talk to us for a minute about myths that corporate America must overcome about HBCU students, and also giving credence to what our HBCU students must do to ensure that they are seen as the leadership, as the leaders that they are with the leadership work that we're developing in them. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm often surprised. It's difficult. I will certainly sort of minimize my answer to be sort of my views and experiences, because it's hard to talk about corporate America writ large, right? I don't know, right? So my going in observation is, one, there is a significant lack of appreciation and or understanding about the historical context for HBCUs.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that there's this perception of self-imposed segregation, as opposed to, did you know that these schools got started because we couldn't go to majority schools? And that the scholarship and pedagogy at these schools are in many instances equal, if not superior, to equally situated schools. And so I think, as is the case with many things as it relates to race, there isn't an appreciation for the context within which HBCUs came up. It's not necessarily this design, we don't want to go to school with you, it's you don't want to go to school with us. And so we created a parallel universe where we could attain the same levels of scholarship, if not exceed those levels of scholarship. So that would be number one. Number two, I also think that because so many of the HBCUs are grounded in agriculture, et cetera, that there is an appreciation for the breadth and depth of study at these institutions. Like, we have finance programs, we have pre-med programs, we have. And so I would also file that in the category of having to educate people on, it is an institution just like any other institution. However, there's a sensitivity around looking for Black scholars, Black and African-American scholars. So I think that has a lot to do with sort of the dissonance between activity on these campuses versus what we think should be happening. Once we get onto campuses, certainly in corporations where I've had influence, I'm big on making sure that our hiring managers build relationships with faculty and staff. if there is a significant difference that I've personally witnessed between HBCUs and majority organizations, it's the care and compassion of the teaching staff and administration for the kids. And this is not to say majority institutions don't care, but Black institutions, there's a level of care and intimacy that is unmatched as far as I can see. And
That's
so
right.
partly what I tell the organizations where I have influence is don't forgo that when you're going to a HBCUs, those administrators and staff personnel are looking at you like, so you want our baby? Who are you and how are you going to support them in being successful in their careers? And so the transactional nature of the college recruiting relationship that you sometimes see on the majority campuses just will not fly on the campus of a HBCU. So we have to come with more compassion, with more awareness, with more of an intention to build those relationships in a way that are sustainable and long lasting. As it relates to the scholars, I would say to the extent that you have any concerns about not being equal to majority scholars, disabuse yourselves of that, number one. And you don't need to qualify your HBCU. You went to Spelman, you went to Morehouse, you went to wherever you went to, and that's it. Not your responsibility to try to, and here's why it's just as good as, because sometimes I hear our scholars talking that way and I kind of go, you don't need to justify. I mean, you ultimately got here, so clearly something worked in your favor.
That's right.
Be about the business of my opening comments in terms of hone your skill and develop your craft. Build those relationships. That's your job.
Absolutely. Excellent. And this is the last question, Jackie, and then we're going to move on to Stedman. And then for our audience, if you guys have questions, please send them through the chat, send them to Milan, Gwen, etc. Jackie, if you would answer this, the three things that I want you to remember are, and this would go for our HBCU scholars, our HBCU leadership. We have nonprofit entrepreneurs on the phone. We have government leaders, corporate leaders. Many of the Freddie Mac customers are on the line. What would you say? The three things you want people to remember.
So the first one we hadn't talked about. It may seem a little odd within this context, but I would say you have to have a faith tradition. You've got to be grounded. Now, I'm Christian, so obviously I'm going to recommend Jesus, but I'm not here to evangelize so much as to say you need a faith tradition. You need something with a historical context that goes far beyond anything you know, through which to process the world, to ground you, to have you have an appreciation for nothing new is actually new, right? What is old is new, what is new is old. You have to have faith and an understanding that things are operating at levels that are bigger than where you are, and have an appreciation for that, right? It helps, I think, to take some of the heaviness, particularly in times like these, if you have a faith tradition to protect and guide your heart, which in turn, I believe, reflects through your thinking and how you show up in the world. So have a faith tradition, a practice that you lean into and embrace and activate. And you know, it's not enough to just say you're Christian. You've got to read the Holy Scriptures. You've got to do the fellowship. You've got to do the work. So that would be number one, which I recognize in a corporate context might sound odd, but it truly is what works for me. And then I go back to the opening comments, and we talked about it throughout our time together, is, you know, you go to work to do something. You make decisions, you solve problems, you do something. So once you decide, again, what your work is, then be about the business of being the best you can be at that thing. You know, take the classes, fellowship with people who do what you do and exchange notes, get the certifications, get the continuing education, look for the opportunities to do that thing. Make it such that, like, org design is my thing. And I feel like blindfolded, hands tied behind my back, if someone said I need to build an organization from scratch, I go, okay, let's do it. I'm good at this. This is what I've spent my career doing this. I understand this. I understand it soup to nuts. Have something that you feel that passionate and confident in, and build that up. You can have other skills, but have a forefront skill that you hone in on and you become expert at. And then I'm telling you the relationships with the, for example, at work, I always tell people, you're not ready for your next promotion until you can tell me who's going to take your place. And that goes back to the relationship. You should be looking for the coach. You should be looking for the mentor. You should be looking for the sponsor, but you should also be looking to how you can be that for other people, right? That's the law of the harvest. You've got to sow to reap, right? It's not just.
Absolutely.
But before we transition to Stedman, can I just say one thing to Mr. Graham?
Please, go ahead.
I'm old enough to have remembered this book. And I would like to read one part of this particular book. Stedman obviously has written others. We're in such an interesting time. We have the dual pandemics. We have the viral pandemic that is COVID-19. And then we have what I consider to be a public health pandemic in the form of racism, right? And these things are converging in ways hitherto unseen. And so no one really knows how to navigate it. And I'm going back to my comments about the faith tradition. It is very easy to live in this time and think it has never been this bad. I actually think it's a sign of middle age, because I'm like, I remember hearing my parents say that, and I'm saying that, I must be middle age, right? But in preparation for this call and having had the opportunity to meet Mr. Graham, which is really just an honor and a privilege, I've gone back to kind of go through this book. And I underlined this in 1997, which is when this book was published. And I have to read it now for those of you who are sort of entertaining this idea of this is the worst it's ever been. Mr. Graham writes, I grew up in an era in which television programming was interrupted all too often with very real and frightening news. Sound familiar? The Cuban Missile Crisis, the assassinations of John and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and civil rights demonstrations and confrontations were among the most frightening events that were played out on television. News bulletins announcing great tragedies and unsettling civil unrest seemed to regularly interrupt our regular programming. It was disorienting, not to mention scary, for me as a child. And so somewhere in there, I talked about the fact that what's new is old and what's old is new. Please don't be distracted. It has been this bad, differently at different points in time. And in the same way that Black people in particular, because I'm thinking, what could have been worse than slavery, as an example? If we can survive those things and achieve, we can certainly work our way through what's going on now. So have faith, y'all, and don't get caught up in the pandemonium of the events around you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And you are right on target. Look, our next speaker, many of you who are associated with HomeFree-USA closely, we work very closely with Stedman Graham. He is a man of not only his commitment to the community, but his commitment to elevating the least of us. This is just something that I've always loved about Stedman. Stedman, I want you to come on, talk to us about leadership, identity leadership. What is it? Why is it important? And then we have to get to some questions, guys. This has been great. We've got to get questions. I know we have several HBCU leaders coming on, and they've got questions for Jackie before she needs to leave. But Stedman, come on, talk to us about identity leadership and why this is so important.
Well, first of all, I want to say Jacqueline did such a fantastic job. She was so good. Yeah. And I learned a lot about who she is, and I appreciate the shout out about the book and all of that. These are difficult times, and we've gone through a lot of this before in terms of having difficult times in our life. I think this is probably one of the greatest opportunities to succeed ever in the history of our world. And the reason I say that is because we have access to technology, and we have the ability to be able to take information and make it relevant to our development. We have the opportunity to be able to be thinkers, focus on ourselves as a way to empower ourselves. We've probably never been able to do that. You know, I teach identity leadership, which is self-leadership. It's based on the philosophy that you can't lead anybody else until you first lead yourself. So self-leadership and self-mastery, after you have been probably enslaved most of your life based on becoming a follower, and you never had the opportunity to really create equality because we've never had access to our own distribution network, which is now technology. We've never had access to knowledge, which is free in a lot of cases. We live in the greatest country in the world. We have access to so many resources now globally. So the ability to be able to take that and make that relevant to our development is the opportunity. That is the equalizer. And you don't have to just go to school to learn. You know, oftentimes, like I talk about, school teaches us how to memorize and take tests, repeat the information back, and label with grade. 2 weeks later, we forget the information. Nothing wrong with school. You got to have school. You're supposed to be in school. You're supposed to have a college education. That's just basic. But what we're talking about is we're talking about building self-mastery today. That's the opportunity today. We're talking about building social economic development. That's the opportunity today. We're talking about becoming an entrepreneur. We're talking about the ability to be able to be a thinker and to build value in ourselves and not be controlled by the external world based on a history of being told everything to do. We don't necessarily have the skills for that. You know, we're trying to make that transition of understanding how to release our potential as a human being. And that kind of takes a while. I mean, that's what I do. I try to teach people, and I know, Marcia, you try to do that with HomeFree, along with the work that you do. You try to educate people and get people to understand how to raise their consciousness so they're not stuck in a fixed mindset of doing the same thing over and over all of the time, waiting for somebody else to give them their freedom. And it takes a long time to learn that. It takes special information to understand that. So, you know, my story is, you know, I grew up in an all-black town surrounded by White County where they said nothing ever good comes out of Whitesboro, in a family with 2 special need brothers, and I grew up with low self-esteem, a lack of confidence in myself, bullied all the time, had to fight all the time, you know, played ball. I'm a ball player, basketball player, former basketball player, which gave me the confidence to believe in myself. Got a scholarship in school, went to college, graduated, went to the service, played ball in Europe, European Pro League, a number of years, you know, in a relationship with a very wonderful person, powerful person, influential person. Her name is Oprah. Y'all, you know, everybody knows her. Defined by race, defined by special need brothers in my family, defined by my relationship. You know, grew up not knowing who I was as a person, didn't understand the value of information and knowledge, didn't understand how to take it and make it relevant to my skill set, my development, couldn't define myself. So I basically grew up thinking that the world defines me. And I never had the skills to be able to tell the world, you don't define me, I'm going to define myself. And so when I discovered freedom, when I discovered my identity, okay, when I discovered the ability to be able to take information and knowledge and make it relevant to my talents, my skills, so I could create my own life. You know, Oprah creates her own life, I create my own life. And I'm not defined by the color of my skin or my external circumstances, which oftentimes the world tries to make you feel like that you are, you know, you are a person of color, and that's all you are. And you are a woman, and you can't make it because it's a man's world, and you are programmed by your religion, and you think that you can't make it because of your family circumstances or whatever circumstances that you buy into that keeps holding you back. and it doesn't allow you to be able to reach your potential based on a success process. So I say all of that, it's a short version, say all of that to say that the process of success is the same for everybody. The difference is some people know it and some people don't. And the 1%, you know what they try to do? They try to make sure that, you know what, I got this information. I got this extra stuff. And Marcia, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tied to the capitalistic system. It's tied to the American free enterprise system and now the global marketplace. I don't want to let anybody know that the process of success is the same and that you can do anything you want to do once you understand the process and how it works. And so I created a 9-step success process to help people understand the process of success and how it works. And the first step starts with, you got to know who you are. I'll say it again. You have to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, the world defines you by your house, your car, your money, your title, your job, your race, your gender, and your religion, and all of that. And so you got to be able to create your own system for success. Otherwise, you focus on becoming an average American citizen who does exactly what I tell you to do every single day. Essentially, you become what I call a slave. And I'm not talking about slave in terms of race. I'm talking about you have a slave mentality. Mm-hmm. And so we're fighting that slave mentality all the time. That's been programmed and it's been used to design a process that marginalizes our existence. And oftentimes is put into a caste system, you know, which has been around for 400 years, trying to do what? Trying to make you less than and make you think you can't do it. And it's almost invisible. You can't even see it. So for me, what I'm trying to do is teach people how to break out of that caste system, that way of thinking, that way of living, that way of organizing your life so that you can break out of that and begin to create your own system for success so you become a co-creator with the world that you live in every single day. So co-creation is important because now I'm a separate person working on a separate system designed and customized for me around my purpose, around my talents, around my skills, around my abilities, and around what I love. Which what Jacqueline was talking about when she was talking about you got to focus on becoming good at what you do. You got to be an expert in your field. And the knowledge and information is available for us to be able to do that. The problem is that we're in a school system that teaches us how to memorize and take tests. Again, like I said, repeat the information back, get labeled with grade. 2 weeks later, we forget the information, excuse me. So we don't have any learning capabilities because we're just going through the motions. We're just sitting in school, acting like we are learning something, and we don't even understand what we learn. And then we can't apply that information to our development, so we don't own anything. So it first starts with raising your consciousness around the content that's relevant to our development so we can build value in ourselves. The value that we give ourselves is the value the world gives us. The world sees us as we see ourselves. So how do we begin to change our consciousness so that we can improve our perspective of who we are based on our talents as a human being, based on our intellect, based on our gifts? So the ability to be able to begin to organize all of that is part of the process. Now, I just went through the first step. I'm not going to take all of this time to go through every step, but identity and purpose and knowing who you are is critical to creating and starting the process of success. Otherwise, you're just kind of going through the motions of doing the same thing over and over every single day. You're not going anywhere, and you turn all your power over to the external world to define your existence.
Stedman, Love you. You know, guys, this is what Stedman and I are on the phone for hours talking about power and progress. And we love this. Now, let me just ask if we could. We want to turn this over now to Milan for questions, because I know Jackie has to get off. She has to get off of the line. We'll have Stedman for a little bit longer, but I know that there are some folks that have questions, comments, statements for Jackie, and we have just 5 minutes left. We'll get back to Stedman. This is powerful conversation from two leaders who truly care about you, truly care about us, and truly care about the communities that we all work in. So let me turn it back over to you, Milan, with our question statements. Particularly, we're going to start off with Jackie, and then we're going to get back to Stedman.
All right. Thank you so very much, Jackie, Stedman. You all gave some jewels for us to use. We actually have a quick note from one of our CFA scholars. Nick, if you're on the line, you could just put yourself on video, and Nick just has a quick piece for you, Jackie, and the family and our family at Freddie Mac. So take it away, Nick.
Hi, everyone. So, Jackie, I just want to say a huge thank you on behalf of the students of the Center for Financial Advancement program. In March of 2020, thousands of HBCU students were displaced as they were forced off their campuses with short notice due to COVID-19. To add fuel to that fire, many businesses that were unprepared to handle virtual internships moved out of their offices and for the work from home order. And inadvertently, a lot of students lost their internships, research offers, job offers, etc. During this time, I think a lot of us felt a strong feeling of discomfort and uncertainty, from apartments we leased and couldn't move in unto the students being dependent students not being able to get the stimulus package. A lot of students in our own way were just simply going through it. So I'm grateful to you, Jacqueline, for your timeless words of wisdom and your unstoppable illuminating light. And to Freddie Mac for sponsoring our Learn to Earn program and giving us a hand that we didn't have. Because of you, over 50 students at 5 different HBCUs were able to step up and learn to earn in this summer of growth and self-leadership. So we truly, truly, truly appreciate you for everything that you have done. And I can tell you how much it means to me. I'm a little emotional about it, but I can't tell you how much it means to me that you've changed a lot of our lives with your support. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I wish you continued success.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, again, for folks at HomeFree-USA and at the Center for Financial Advancement, we have a lot of dreams of how we want to help folks, but it becomes down to the funding and the commitment and the partnership that we have from others like yourself, from Freddie Mac. So, Jacqueline, we have 3 minutes with you. So a quick question, which is for a younger professional, and I think Marcia or Stedman, if you all could mute your line, please. You all can mute your line. Just unmute yourself when you're ready to speak again, because we're getting some feedback. So, Jacqueline, for you, what is one piece of advice you would give to, or I should say, what's one common mistake that folks that are new to the work world make that really prevents them from going to the next level?
So I genuinely don't think you can make any mistakes this early. Like, in fact, I would say, you don't know enough to make a mistake. I mean, I think in everything you do, be as thoughtful as you can. I'm a big get a piece of white paper out and pro and con your approach, and just have a thoughtful approach to what it is that you want to achieve. And if it doesn't work out, then what did you learn from it? There is value in the after action review. Like, if I had it all to do again, knowing what I know now, what would I have done differently? I think if you're being thoughtful, if you're being smart, if you're taking calculated risk, it's hard to attribute anything as a mistake, right? The behavior I will point out for everybody's consideration is watch the loose asides, right? Black people are verbal, like we invented speech as far as I'm concerned. And the loose aside goes something like this, because I've done it. So I'm talking about a mistake I have made. I was leading a project for a firm that I was working for at the time, and the project team was comprised of both clients and then members of the firm. And I was co-leading it with a member of the client team who had what to this day I think was not a smart idea. And I said to somebody in a meeting quietly, it wasn't meant to embarrass him, but it was sort of off the cuff, that's a stupid idea. And it got around. And I put at jeopardy a $30 million piece of business, bottom line to the firm, because I made this loose aside. And if I had to do it now, like I say, I would still characterize the idea as not being particularly thoughtful. It didn't work, but I spent so much time having to overcome that because I embarrassed him, right, with my loose aside. It wasn't worth it. And so what I would say is when you're in an environment, be mindful of what's coming out of your mouth in an unthoughtful, unplanned way, because sometimes those things will hamper your progress more than anything that you may have thought you made a mistake about, right? So watch your loose asides. The second thing I would say is a matter of behavior. If someone gives you advice, always go back and tell that person how it worked out, even if you didn't take the advice. I will tell you as someone that's in the advice giving business, because I'm like, I've made all these mistakes. You all need to come and learn from me. Don't do this or what have you. There is something so special and thoughtful and compassionate about coming back to someone and saying, you gave me this advice. I took it and here's how it worked out or didn't. Or you gave me this advice. I didn't take it. I did this instead and here's why. This all goes back to relationship building, right? And there's something very meaningful about someone coming back to close that loop with you to say, thank you for the time that you invested and here's how it all panned out. So those are the two things I would call out as behavioral things to be mindful of.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. That's so helpful. I know you have to jump off. I'm respectful of your time, and we appreciate having you, Jackie. And Stedman, and thank you again for Freddie Mac's support of the Center for Financial Advancement and HomeFree-USA. You all are truly committed to not only the community, but to communities of color, to low to moderate income communities. And the great thing about Freddie Mac is you not only talk the talk, but you put MONEY behind the talk, so you walk the walk too. So we appreciate you. Please proceed with your day safely and happily, and we wish you well. Stedman, a question that came in for you. So many, especially of our young people, but even older professionals, you know, and especially as Black folks, just in our day-to-day life, we feel enslaved. You know, it's a lot of pressure on us. It's a lot of stress on us. And we want to do better, but it just becomes a matter of how. So what is one step, what's a baby step you would give to our folks on the line that just feel enslaved and trapped in their day-to-day life, and they don't even know how to make a step forward to take on the leadership principles that you express?
Well, Milan, first of all, hello, and thank you so much for being a part of this. You do a fantastic job. And, you know, the one thing that I think is the most difficult thing to do in our life, and it's the most effective thing to do if you want to achieve success and not produce failure, is that you have to transform energy. Now that's very interesting. Transform energy, which means you got to be able to transform the energy. If you have negative energy, you got to be able to transform that energy to a positive energy. That means everything, the energy doesn't leave. It's all the same, you know, so energy is energy is energy. But your success is always based on the energy that you put out. And if you're putting out negative energy, you're going to get a bad attitude. You're going to get a different look in your eyes. You're going to get the results probably not too good if you're building relationships. So your ability to be able to control your energy, which means if you've been, growing up in an environment where you've been beat upon, you've got a lot of trauma, you've got a lot of pain, and your energy is just negative, and your attitude is negative. And the law of attraction, knowing that the law of attraction says whatever you put out, you get back. and you're just a vessel of negative energy. You know, we go back to the good book. It says God is love, John 12:13. God is love. There's a reason for that. So when you begin to focus on God and love, then you begin to change the way that you see things. You look at the glass half full as opposed to half empty. You think you can do it as opposed to can't doing it. So your ability to be able to transcend race and transcend your situation and transcend your opportunities is based on the most powerful word in the world, which is love. All of us are trying to get to love. I work in the prison system right now. I've worked in the prison system 5 years, but I'm actually working, and Marcia knows this, with inmates and working in the South Carolina system. And folks are in prison because they can't find love within themselves, because they hate themselves. So if you hate yourself, it's a very difficult process of creating success in your life, because you're starting from ground zero or minus zero, because you can't even begin to produce anything, build anything, create anything, or design your life, because you're focusing on the foundation of your existence, which is negative. And you're so hardwired, we're so hardwired, we are, because I'm working on that every single day of trying to transform my energy from negative to positive, because the foundation of my existence is negative. And when I go back to being comfortable, I'm more comfortable thinking negative than I am positive. So what I have to do is wake myself up, right? And raise my consciousness about where I am in terms of my thinking and my feelings. And once I change my thinking, I'm more aware of that, then I can change my feelings. And then I can change the result of what is going to happen to me, because I can control that. I can control the energy. So that's something that we have to work on all of our lives, especially if you have a lot of trauma and you have a lot of pain. And it's really just a mindset. So it's changing the mindset to overcome all the negativity throughout your life that you've been programmed to believe, that is sometimes designed, right, and put into an oppressive system so that you can basically destroy yourself. So love, it's only two choices. It's either hate or love, good or bad, will or won't, can't or can, looking at the glass half empty or half full. What do you choose every day? Every day you wake up, you want to choose love, and you want to organize a whole process around that allows you to self-actualize your potential as a human being. That's what success is.
Excellent. And we have 1 minute, Stedman, and tell everyone, how can we learn more? How can we learn more about this self-actualization process so we can really hit the ground running and move forward?
Well, I'm at StedmanGraham.com. I've written a number of books, 12 books. I love the book, Identity Leadership. I love that book because it talks about self-leadership. It's self. So the best advice I can give anybody, and all I do is work on myself, so the more I have, the more I can give to other people. Oprah also does that. Works on herself all the time so she can be the best person she can be, so she can serve more. If you don't have anything, you can't give anything. And the beautiful thing about HBCUs and all the students that we're talking to, you have it. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't have it. You got it. All you have to do is develop it and build it and create it and design it. And my book, Identity Leadership, focuses on self. I want you to focus on self. I don't want you to think about anybody else but self. And I want you to be really a great student while you're in school. I want you to study for self. I want you to learn for self. I want you to organize for self. I want you to build relationships for self, so you could be the best leader you could possibly be. It's a leadership issue. And so you can't lead anybody else until you first lead yourself.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up. You're exactly right, Stedman. We appreciate you. StedmanGraham.com. StedmanGraham.com. He has a plethora of information, well-written books. I even love that little passport book, because a lot of us don't want to read, including myself. I can't read. I'm not trying to sit for a long period of time. That passport book is concise and efficient. Everyone on the line, it's the top of the hour. It's 1 p.m. We appreciate you having us in your home, on your computer, online, Wi-Fi, or whatever. Stedman, thank you so very much. You know, you're a family member now. You're a cousin of home.
I love y'all. Hey, listen, I love y'all.
You good.
I love everybody out there.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing day. And check us out August 12th. You'll get more information about how to manage your life and business while managing stress. Thank you so much. It's time to move up the financial ladder together. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See ya.